Alright, let's get started on this. Where the hell's Big Mac? Wait, what's this? Are you kidding me? What month is this? October. Oh, right. Harvest. Fine. Who's replacing him this month? Fine. Roll the intro, then. Let's just get started. In the video game media, there are two sides. The one side that likes the game, and the other side that hates the game. But with both sides, there are some games that are either overly hated that it ends up falling into obscurity, or is talked about endlessly. Or a game that is praised so much that people will not shut up about how good the game is, which is the topic of today. Note, this will be a controversial list, just to warn you. Now let's begin. With the Sonic the Hedgehog series, any game that is listed as good will be talked about by several fans for years on end, and the same applies to bad Sonic games. But when a game gets hated on that's good, some people will PMS over it in the Sonic fan base. As such, Sonic CD. Out of all the 2D Sonic games, I like this one the least. The time travel mechanic I found did not work, since you're basically playing the same level, but with a palette swap. Plus, finding the generators took more time than necessary. The story also doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In the original version, it's Princess Sally in the manual that you have to save, yet she's not in the game cutscenes. And although the time travel story can work, such as in Chrono Trigger for the SNES, it doesn't work here. There's no suspense at all, and if you don't get all the time stones, which are useless anyway, all that happens is the Fortress Reapers. The music in both versions, except for Sonic Boom, isn't that good either, I find. They don't fit the scenario, or they just sound bland. And the final thing I want to say is what this game's legacy brought. Shitty ports, and two characters that are either labeled as annoying, or just generic. So overall, while some may view Sonic CD as the greatest Sonic game of all, I listed it as one of the worst. In this age of gaming, the sandbox genre is bigger and better than what it was over 20 years ago. With larger disk space and better graphics, games are getting bigger and have more to do than the sandbox games of old. But the original Grand Theft Auto sucks.
Good shot, kid. I think you got it.
Though it was one of the innovators to the sandbox genre we have today, that's the only positive I can give to it. The music is bland, the weapons aren't that good, and the gameplay is very boring. The graphics I don't even like, and while I do understand this is a 90s game, this was released on the PlayStation in 1997. Come on! This was a year after Super Mario 64, and this was the same year as FF7's release. I know I wouldn't focus on the graphics that much for this, but with this game, it's a hindrance. And when I'm running from the cops, I don't know what I can go through and what I can't, and the same applies for obstacles on the road, which leads me to lose, and it pisses me off so much. Yet in other games, like Blast Corps on the N64, which did the concept so much better, this is not a problem, and not even the later sequels have this issue. Grand Theft Auto should not have been in a top-down view, because it, at least for me, doesn't work at all. It was also very repetitive. Missions that have the same concept, the cars that do the same things, and even the music kept repeating itself. Though it was the innovator to the sandbox series, it just wasn't a good one to me. Number 3 on the list is not a surprise. This game, I find, has not stood the test of time, and the later sequels fixed this. But on the N64, we got Super Mario 64. Before you guys accuse me of hating on Mario, I don't hate him. Mario is one of my favorite franchises in the video game industry, and I would list most of their games as my favorites of all time. But back to Mario 64. Where to begin? Controls were very stiff, and it's not my control stick that's the reason why, because I tried it with several games of the console and had no issue with it. The game got very repetitive with the worlds, with the exception of the first mission, and it didn't motivate me to 100% the game. And this is the same guy who loves to do that stuff. The music was also not that good either, very bland or not memorable. I have nothing to say on the graphics, since, unlike Grand Theft Auto, they don't hinder the game. But the biggest hit on this game, to me, is the bosses. Only 3 bosses? Are you kidding me? In the other games, there were more bosses, and they weren't repetitive as all hell. I mean, yes, there's one other one, but you have to look really hard for it. I mean, I would go on, but what's the use? People are gonna bitch at me anyway in the comments saying, "You don't know what you're talking about." So, let's just go on to number 2. At number 2 is a game that I feel is decent, but it's not worthy of the praise, at least to me. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. First off, while the gameplay introduced new mechanics and items, I didn't like the items introduced into the game. Well, except for the hook shot, but that's it. And even then, in Ocarina of Time, it got an upgrade that made it better anyways. The music is not very memorable at all either, only exception being the intro music, which is okay, and the ending music, which is also okay. The story also wasn't that good. All it is that Ganon was sealed away, and some sorcerer's trying to revive him through the use of people. Sounds like the same story as Zelda 2, and the story barely has any development throughout the game. It's a goddamn joke. And even the side quests, they were terrible in this game, with nothing at least rewarding. In every other game in this series, the side quests gave you an item that could help you in battle, or help you at least get something in the game. But here, nothing satisfying. Nothing! Even in Wind Waker, you got something that can let you look at the enemy's health. It wasn't a big thing, but it was something. So to conclude, it may not be my most hated Zelda, that would be Zelda 2, but it has not aged well one bit for me. So what could top A Link to the Past? Let's just skip the recap and hit the number 1 entry. Number 1 is a game that came out after, in my opinion, the best remakes in this series. Number 1 is a game so bad, the only thing I like about it is the Pokemon and the music. At number 1 is Black and White. Not that Black and White! Thank you, Iris. This game, this piece of shit game, is the worst Pokemon game I have played. With Hey You Pikachu, I can understand how bad it is, but at least it was an original concept for the series, and I enjoyed that game. But this game is so horrible, I stopped playing it a month after I got it. And I never do that. As I said earlier, I love to 100% a game, but not for this one. For one, the gameplay didn't bring in anything new except for triple/rotation battles, abilities, and attacks, and even then, I hardly used the triple battles. I didn't like the abilities introduced, and some of the newer attacks, they were just okay. Granted, some of them I liked, such as Bulldoze and Revenge, but that's it. The rest of the attacks introduced are copy-paste of other attacks introduced in older generations, and they were done way better. Icicle Crash is an example. This attack is so much weaker than the much superior Ice Beam. And even the graphics were subpar. They didn't innovate that much, and before you say, "Wow, they brought in 3D graphics," and as much as I would say that's a good thing, Heart Gold Soul Silver did it first technically, though it wasn't implemented and you can only get it through cheating. And even the sprites were rehashed from earlier games, such as Drapion, Feraligatr, and Typhlosion, all from Gen 4. I guess to be fair though, the animated sprites weren't that bad, but I just wish they did more than move side to side or jump. Even the side quests were few and far between. Christ, Gen 4 had more to offer than this. As I said in the beginning though, I do like the Pokemon introduced. with the exception of my Ludix evolution method. Ugh. And the music is one of my favorite soundtracks in the Pokemon games, next to Mystery Dungeon 2, of course. But those are the only positives I can say to the game I can find. And let me ask this. What did Black and White 2 bring new to the series, aside from graphic changes and animated trainer sprites? Oh boy. Before you say, the story, it's a rehash of Generation 2's story, just with Team Plasma. And before you say Gen 2 did this as well, with Gen 2, they did it much better, and it was original at the time for this series. Here, it's rehashed and cliche. The rivals? Redone from sprites from the old game. New cities? Again, barely changed, just with a palette swap. Different gym leaders? Only 2 were added, and Sharon doesn't count since he was in the last game. Even though he was a rival, he doesn't count for this. New champion? Rehashed idea from Emerald and Gen 2, so it's not an original idea. Unova's changed? Not really. Only a couple towns were added, and the old towns were just minor changes. So how is this game not rehashed? So overall, Generation 5 is not only my most hated Pokemon game, but my #1 game that I hate that everyone else likes. I'm the Infected Soldier, and welcome to Halloween month. This is going to be very interesting, especially with a very profile list like this. I'm gonna get a lot of comments bitching about Generation 5, aren't I? Yeah, boy. Let's begin. Iris, hand me the sword. Let's go.